Bonjour à tous, je vous propose peut-être de commencer, de vous installer confortablement.
So I propose that we start. Please take a seat. So I'm Mireille Wimbert. I'm a journalist, senior editor at the Capital magazine. We are together at these 23rd encounters to talk about recreating hope. In terms of medicine, you will see that hope is really there. There's hope everywhere. Innovation is really important, supported by research, but also supported by digital solutions that will create a genuine revolution, especially in medicine. A simple example, today, the world over, you have 5,500 surgical robots that act. So these surgical robots are assisting robots. They don't do the surgery by themselves, but in 5 or 10 years' time, thanks to digital solutions, thanks to the data injected in the robots, will perform the surgery by themselves. So it's no longer sci-fi. And that's what we'll talk about, this innovation today. So to talk about this, Cercle des Économistes brought together an exceptional panel. You have university professors, researchers, representatives of startups, pharmaceutical groups, and the whole health chain. Each will have the floor, and at the end we'll keep some time for your questions. So I propose to hand over the floor to Pierre-Yves Joffard, who's an economist, and who is a member of the Cercle des Économistes, who will propose a short introduction to present this wonderful roundtable. Thank you, Mireille. Thank you. Welcome to all of you. Today we'll talk about innovation in health. Innovation is part of things that can contribute to give us hope, or should contribute to give us hope. Innovation is in all directions, not only in health, but if you give some thought as to the last 5 years, what are the innovations that really change our lives? Yes, iPhone, yes, ChatGPT, yes, airbags. But health innovation in health are the most important innovations because they can help to extend our lifetime in a better health condition. So we see that it's really part of the among the most important elements in our everyday life. Determine the progress made by human society. So health innovation, well, all directions. We can talk about drugs, medication, medical devices, medical systems, approaches, organization of the healthcare. And there again, digital solution can be at the heart of genuine revolutions in how we organize and coordinate the different actors in the health chain. So the roundtable that we brought together here tonight, this evening, is really exceptional with its diversity and geographical diversity also. We always remember that you can't think of innovation in health at the scale of one country. Medications that work in a country will also work well in another country to cure the same diseases. So innovation in health is by essence global. Otherwise, well, the outlets are international, the markets are international, and the whole chain is conditioned by the specificities of the countries in which those products are generated. Innovation is in health lies on an extremely complex and rich ecosystem which involves basic research, academic, public, private, so fundamental research, applied research, translational, national, translational, moving from the lab to the drug or injection drug. So it mobilizes different players. We have international production chains that can be very virtuous in how they can bring forth emulations in terms of innovation, but also reveal weaknesses. And we see in the ruptures in supply in France with certain drugs, very common products. And so it's an international sector. It also depends on local context, on regulatory aspects. We have a system where things are tightly imbricated between the private and public sectors. The private sector can be involved in fundamental research, but also as financiers. You know, some of the expenditures of research and development can be promoted and encouraged by tax breaks, tax incentives, the policies. When it comes to the regulations, when it comes to validate drugs, they vary according to the country. The tariff settings, the price settings, also is important, and so that's at a national level. We can't talk of the drug market at a European level, even if we'll just talk about that level. So the stakes are varied, and we'll try to analyze this change. It's an evolution from the most fundamental to the end user, to the patient. Always thinking about the missions of innovation in health. Two missions: one, finding new products to cure diseases that we did not cure in the past, and second, that these innovations can be easily accessed to all those who need it. Aristotle said the progress is worth it if it can be shared by all. And so very important to bear this in mind. Thank you very much, Pierre-Yves. And we'll start with academic research. We'll travel a bit, and we're going to go to Saudi Arabia, if you will. Enas Elisa, you are the president of the prestigious Princess Noura University in Riyadh. Exceptional university, 33,000 students, the largest university, women's university and girl university in the world. You are a scientist yourself. You're a doctor in anatomy and neurobiology. You've published extensively in academic reviews, magazines in your specialty. Can you tell us how this university contributes to medical progress?
Sorry, I'll have to speak in English. Wish I could speak in French, perhaps in another lifetime. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much, Pierre. Thank you for the conference, for inviting me to be here. I'm very excited and honored to be here in this 23rd anniversary of this prestigious meeting. And I'm very happy to tell you the story of Princess Noura University. I tend to speak very fast, and I'm told to speak slower today for the translation. So it's an exercise. It'll make me a healthier, better professor in the future to speak slower. So Princess Noura University, just like Mary said, is the largest women's university in the world, not just in terms of size, but in terms of number of disciplines we have in the university. We have over 114 academic programs, more than 33,000 students, over 2,000 faculty. And in Princess Noura University, 15% of our students are in the schools of health. We have 5 schools of health. We have medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, health rehabilitation and health sciences, and nursing. In Princess Noura University, just like any other university in the world, we strive to produce competitive graduates that are competent citizens, global citizens of the world. And we decided to focus on 2 major areas. One is health and wellness, and 2 is innovative technologies. And that's why I think I'm here today participating in this conference. Also, being a women's university, we have a huge responsibility towards empowering women in administrative positions and advancing their careers. So we partnered, I'll share this with you, we partnered with INSEAD from here in France to train 1,700 Saudi females on leadership capacity, building leadership capacity in Saudi Arabia, together in collaboration with INSEAD. So let's step back to medicine and innovative technologies. In medicine, everything is evolving. Everything is evolving every day. And just like we disrupt clinical care, we disrupt medical education. So we innovate in Saudi Arabia in the way we train and we educate women. In Princess Noura University, we're very privileged to have the largest simulation center. We rely heavily on simulation, medical simulation. We have over 200 mannequins, over three major surgical, you talked about surgical robots. We have surgical virtual reality rooms, surgical rooms where students can actually go in and train. In the part of innovation and technology, 24% of our student body in Princess Noura University are in STEM. 24%. These are the schools of science, engineering, and computer sciences. And of course, we really foster on international collaboration in building research capacity, development, and research. And most recently, we launched the Apple Developer Academy, the first Apple Developer Academy in the region, on the premises of Princess Noura University. It started in 2021, in October 2021, and so far we've graduated two cohorts of female coders. The first one was 103, and last month we celebrated the graduation of 193 female coders. So we are really building female capacity in the field of health and technology worldwide, and we're happy to share our experience here today in France. Thank you, Mary.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you. We'll continue traveling. I propose that we stop in Singapore, where we will meet Dean O. Mr. O, you're at the head of the Department of Biomedical Engineering of the National University of Singapore. You're also at the head of a certain number of research institutes in the field of AI, artificial intelligence. It's your specialty. You are obviously a researcher yourself, and the youngest researcher that was admitted at the National Academy of the U.S. As an inventor. So many things. I hope I got this right. But anyway, you tell us that we always think of AI in terms of big data. That's all, we always consider AI as big data. But you say in the medical field that the exercise is different. Big data is important, but it's not enough. There's also the small data. You have to study the data of the patients, the data of a group of patients. Can you explain this and tell us to what extent this helps make progress?
Be here today. I wanted to thank the organizers. I'm going to speak in English as well. I come to everybody from Singapore. I direct the Institute for Digital Medicine. And at this institute, we have pioneered and currently have 16 clinical trials currently active. And what's unique is every single one of them is interventional, or they're treatment-driven using AI. For everything from blood cancers to solid cancers to infectious diseases to neurology and beyond. And the question is about big data, right? Whenever we have the emergence of a promising technology, such as AI, a lot of the terminology we're dealing with now is big data. And the concept is, can we collect a lot of data from around the world to train an AI model to treat the next person that walks in the door? The thing is, everybody in the room here, we're all different from each other, that we know. But the challenge is we're all different from ourselves over time. And so that when we effect treatment for different diseases, that treatment needs to evolve alongside the patient. And it's for that reason why we do not use big data when we treat our patients. In fact, I would argue when a patient walks in the door, we have no data on that patient. And what we do is we come in and we prospectively calibrate each patient. We vary the doses of the different drugs that they get, and we measure the responses over time. And we use that to create what we call a digital avatar. And that digital avatar is a three-dimensional map where we use only a patient's own data to manage only their own care dynamically. Right? I'm going to give you one example of how we do what we do. About a year ago, we had a patient come into our institute, and they had failed virtually every line of treatment they had. They failed standard chemotherapy, they failed targeted therapy, they failed immunotherapy. And this patient was not far away from hospice care or end of life. And so when this patient was given a line of treatment and they didn't respond at all, which is actually quite common in cancer therapy, we actually had calibrated the patient. We spent a little bit of time understanding how they respond to different doses. We spent a little bit of time collecting their biomarkers to understand how they respond to these variable doses. And we created this avatar. And for this patient, without changing the drugs, remember, they did not respond to this line of treatment at very high dose. But without changing the drugs and just by reducing the dose of one of the drugs by about 50%, imagine that, reducing the dose by 50%, we flipped that patient from becoming a non-responder into a responder. Right? And so what we did is we bought substantial time for this patient with very high quality of life. And we did this not only for this patient, but we do this for many patients. Right? Using only their own data, we design better regimens for them and we dose these regimens better using small data. Only that patient's own data to manage only their own care. So I'll conclude with, you know, in this emerging world, when we think about new technologies, it's okay to think differently about how we do what we do. We're at that stage for AI now. And for things like cancer treatment, sometimes less is more, right? Sometimes less is more. And so I think we have this very exciting opportunity right now to really explore this digital health revolution for more patients across the globe. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur O, c'est tout à fait fascinant.
Thank you, Mr. O. Thank you, Mr. Fascinating. I'll hand over the floor to Maria Pereira. You are also, Madam, a researcher. You're the innovative director of a French startup which is called Ticium. You co-founded Ticium with Christophe Bancel, the brother of Mr. Bancel at Moderna, who created the vaccination. You're a doctor in bio, PhD in bioengineering, the diploma from graduate from the MIT, and you were mentioned in Forbes at the MIT. And my first question, you do research, and you will explain the innovation Ticium proposes and talk about the long path between academic research once you've discovered a medication right to the production of the drug and the marketing of the drug or a medical device of any kind. Okay, thank you.
For the invitation to be here today and to share my experience over the last years trying to bring a technology from academia, from the bench to the bedside. And I think we are all aware that innovation in the medical sector it's booming, right? Especially over the last years with COVID, vaccines, CAR T cells, RNA. I think we have all been started to be used to hear about all these fancy medical technologies. But I think what's impressive to think about is that the building blocks for the technology that we are using today and that are starting to be on the clinics today, they have been invented over several years in academia, right? So that sometimes things don't make sense immediately from the start, but as the research progresses, as innovation progresses, at some point things converge, and that's where we will have those disruptions, such has been the case with robots, with vaccines. It's the contribution of many different people, and I think that's also the story from Ticium. So to give you a sense, I was a PhD student at MIT with Professor Jeff Karp and Professor Bob Langer. And very early on during my PhD, one of my PhD advisors, Jeff, put me in touch with a clinician. And basically, he asked me the question, can you help us develop something that can close heart defects in a minimally invasive way, and that you can have a technology that basically can grow as the child grows. So if you think about a hole inside the heart, why not a glue? And that's what exactly we set to develop initially in academic setting, a new material that can be used in open surgery, minimally invasive surgery, and that can be used to replace sutures, staple, highly damaging traumatic technologies to tissue, and basically have a way that tissues can be repaired in a less complex and a traumatic way. So I did. It was a great project. So I advanced with that idea during my PhD, collaborating with clinicians, engineers, different people in the ecosystem. And I think it's something that I'll go back very often. I think in the end, it's about people. When you are developing innovation, it's all about the people that you are lucky enough to find as you move along. And MIT has this great ecosystem, right? It's not only MIT, there's the hospitals, there's the industry. You really have this amazing ecosystem where you can very early on try to understand what is important, what is meaningful, to make sure that you can really focus on energy on something that is worth it. So yeah, started to develop the research. We came up with this material. Then, when I was finishing my PhD, met Christophe Bancel. Together with another French entrepreneur, they were looking to create an ecosystem in France, to launch new companies, to develop new technologies. And basically, yeah, we started the company and really with the goal of bringing this material from the bench to the bedside. It seems easy. It seems when you are in academia, you think, okay, we've done the most difficult part. Now it's going to be easy, but things are never as easy as you originally planned. Taking this material, translating it, scaling up, industrializing, producing, making sure we could have something that could be safe to implant in patients. It's something that took time and took a lot of. We had to leverage a lot the experience from the ecosystem, and I think I was quite lucky in France to really find people with the expertise, with this translation expertise, to really make sure that we could be successful in this process. So in this translation process, I think there's really three elements, or as we think about an ecosystem, to really be able to think about translation. I think it's the clinician and the patient. Basically, they give you the why you should be doing something. There's the research academia that can give you the what. But I think very importantly, there's also the industry that can give you the how. Basically, how do you make sure that you can bring something successfully from an idea to the patient. Of course, you cannot do this work without capital, and I think that's something also that we learned very very early in our path. We have a new material. We had to invent new manufacturing processes to be able to produce this material, and very quickly, one of the things that we realized very quickly is that we could not find for certain manufacturing steps that we could not find anyone with the expertise to do what we wanted to do. So very quickly, we had to discuss with our investors. We need to build our own manufacturing site, and that was when you are early as a startup, that can be quite scary. But I think it's very important not to be afraid to be bold. If you really want to innovate, if you really want to push something forward, you need this kind of bold moves to make sure that you can really set yourself up to success. If we had not taken this decision, if we had not found the capital to be able really to take this step, TCM would not exist. TCM would not exist today. So ideas are great, but also making sure that you can make them a reality. It's a key step, as there's many different traps along the way that can kill very easily great ideas. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, madame.
Thanks a lot. I think that you closed the last tour de table, the last round, and you managed to raise 170 million euros. That's quite a lot. So now, Jérôme Verossus, you are the general head of Biogarant, a big French laboratory, one of the global leaders in generic drugs and medicines and biosimilars. So these innovations are quite costly, of course. So the question is the following: how can you be successful in terms of innovations? And how do we make sure that innovations benefit the highest number of people? So we want to recreate hope, revive hope in terms of health. This is a sensitive topic. We need to create hope. We need to nurture hope. And of course, innovation has sped up, has accelerated, as the previous speakers pointed out. And acceleration is really fast. Ultra-powerful innovations now with new technologies. With tailor-made treatments, we can focus on pathologies that were niche pathologies And today we are in a position to develop new pathologies and new solutions. Of course, progress. You have lots of people involved in progress as part of the health ecosystem, so we want to push progress. We want to foster progress with startups, with academic researchers. The laboratories are part and parcel. They're involved. They have some platforms, or they will cooperate with the startups. So it's a whole dynamics. It's a whole momentum. So I would say that there are lots of innovations moving ahead at a faster pace. But today, how can we make sure that innovation can be accessible by everybody in some countries? We are lucky enough because we have a kind of welfare state able to pay for health, but to what extent and how far today? Moreover, there are some countries which were not welfare states, and with Obama they created Obamacare and now Medicare, and we feel that there's a will to help people in terms of healthcare. This morning we attended a round table, so you have people in good health. They are between 50 and 60 years of age, and in northern countries, people in good health, they will ask for health care when they are 70. So we need to work on prevention. We need to work on predictive diagnosis in order to avert long-term treatments. As Dean Maya and Enas said, we need to pool information across countries, and I think that artificial intelligence should enable us to do that. We need to pool data. We need to make the most of the errors. We need to make the most of the successes of others. Will have an impact on treatments, the rapidity of the innovations, and the price. Because, of course, if we pool data, if we share data, the individual costs will decrease, and we need to couple that with other strategic challenges. This is something that we felt during COVID. This is something that we felt during the war in Ukraine and with the commercial war with China. How can we make sure that we can be protected? Health is an essential element, a vital element for each and every state and for the states as a whole. How can we protect our production? How can we make sure that we depend less on other countries in terms of critical treatments? So sovereignty is a pivotal topic. So for us, we believe that accessibility to treatments shouldn't be reserved to the happy few. And it is the case in some countries. Even in some advanced countries, such as the United States, the average price of an innovation for an innovative treatment is $226,000 a year per patient. Imagine when you have to pay such an amount of money, it's impossible. So here, these are the happy few. And that's not good. We believe in a model that is holistic, with a very good management of the product life cycles. And this is something that we encourage. Protection of innovation through patents. This is very important because people will invest $170 million, because Dean will invest in data. And in data management, it's a matter of protecting innovations through patents, and conversely, once the patent is terminated, we need to create a virtual circle in order to boost drugs or similar biological or generic drugs or biomedicines to have identical treatments, identical drugs, providing the same formula, the same security of our patients, and the states will be able to make some significant savings. The example of France. In France, we are ahead of other countries in terms of product life cycle. Of course, we can make some improvements, so you can save 3 billion euros a year for the health system, and we need those 3 billion in order to fund innovation, because innovation is increasingly expensive. And I think that you read the media recently. For example, you have 16 therapeutical innovations for patients suffering from cancer. If they are not cared for by the French system, it's because there are some issues with resources. So how can we break this cycle? And this is our proposal. Thanks a lot. Christian Schmidt de la Brelli, you are at the end of a chain because you are a financier. So in France, we have the welfare state with the social security system. We have another system above called the supplementary insurance. You are one of the representatives of the supplementary insurance. You manage Ecclesia, social providency, pension, retirement. You'll be talking about innovation, and as part of your model is that providency units were created by professions. So basically, you don't insure groups of individuals, but professional branches, professional businesses, especially transport. You're going to tell us how, through these professional branches, you try and promote innovation as a financier. Thanks a lot, Mireille. So our business is similar to an insurer, so an institutional investor, in fact, in many fields. But we have a specific feature. As we are a non-profit insurer. It doesn't mean that we need to incur losses, but our business model is based on the long haul rather than the monthly report review of other companies. We are involved in health innovation. We have a humane strategy. We want to improve the services being rendered to the companies and to the employees that we protect. And of course, the employees, they want to make the most of these new innovations. Of course, we want to lend our contribution to the transformation of the ongoing health system. So the health system that we focus on has some elements. The hospital system is tired, is in a bad patch. So we need to develop new methods. We need to focus on prevention, medical deserts. In fact, it means that we need to work on access to care. As a supplementary insurance company, we were the startups of telemedicine. So this was not invented by the states, but by the supplementary insurance companies. And of course, there are hundreds of thousands of startups, and they have some innovations, and we need to pick up the new innovations, and we want to know which innovations we want to apply for our customers in this field. So we protect the different sectors, so hospitality, transport, companies, health companies. We will protect the artisans, the craftsmen, the craftswomen, florists, to name but a few. So 300,000 e-health applications, and which processes, which models can we find? So we have to make sure that the startups are sustainable, and we are a confidence third party, less than the health professional, i.e. the doctors. But at the end of the day, we need to provide some guarantees when it comes to using those different innovations. We need to verify their business model and their sustainability, and we need to gauge the impact of the added value to our insurers. I will give you some examples. So we launched some prevention-related programs. We've talked about the transportation business. We have a program on the ecosystem of the 600,000 people working in the transportation industry. So we have a program called Feel Healthy while being a transport employee. We created a subsidiary remedy using the secretion of endorphins for people who are suffering from fibromyalgia. And in fact, we manage to take that into the health warranties. And 2 1/3 of the transport drivers using this bracelet felt better. We measured the impact. You can use a mobile application for problems of physical activities in the hospitality sector with a program called HNR Wellbeing. So how do we fetch these startups? Can an institutional investor get those sourcing tools? The answer is no. So we build on confidence third parties, trusted third parties in the ecosystem. Have in mind a cooperation with Sanofi, with Generali, an insurance company. So we cooperate with many people in order to be part and parcel of an ecosystem called Future for Care. Have in mind an investment fund that was created by French mutual funds. It's a matter of sourcing these startups that we will be using in this field. So all this progress doesn't rely only on technologies, but they rely on prevention programs that are quite simple. I was talking about the transport industry. So the transport driver will be followed up in terms of sleep, in terms of malnutrition, to name but a few. But as part of these programs, we conduct polls in order to gauge the impact regarding this program. 95% of the employees who enrolled in this program followed their recommendation, our recommendations, and the health condition of these people improved. So it's very action-oriented, it's very pragmatic, but we have a role to play. We are a non-profit making company, so we focus in the long term, and we are an insurer caring for the general public. And of course, we have been in the position to invest with sponsorship programs. We contributed to the implementation of the foundation of the Institute of Brain and Bone Marrow. We are one of the active members in the board. We invested in a structure stemming from VCR, i.e. Clinatech, through a program called Brain-Computer Interface. Maybe you've seen it through a publication recently, especially during the last health symposium. So we are sponsors in the long term. We don't want to get immediate return on investment. Of course, we invest in short-term neurosurgical membranes. For example, you have the spinal cord that is being cut, and we won't tell people, put the exoskeleton and you will walk. No, we do more than that. And in this field, we want to go to the field. We want to get some feedback from the different programs we implement with the transportation industry. We are also liaising with the banks. So we need to take into account the executives who cast a future-oriented eye in terms of innovation. So we are working with another pharmaceutical company. What is important is cross-pollination. So how can we find solutions to find high-potential executives who are committed when they start working, and then in the future they tend to forget about innovation. So We have an upstream, a downstream approach, but we have a very pragmatic approach. We are the fifth largest insurance company in France, but we focus on the long term. Thanks a lot.
Écoutez, il nous reste 15 minutes. Moi, évidemment...
15 minutes left. I have lots of questions I made to put to the different speakers, but maybe you have some questions. And I think that you should be given a say. So there's a roving mic. So we have a question here. Sir, can you introduce yourself? Who would you like to put your question to? I'm Mr. Prorel. I'm a doctor. I'm in Provence. A question to the Biogarant Managing Director. First, a question and then a comment. I know that active principles are being bought in China or Pakistan. I'm a prescriber, I'm a doctor. I want to make sure that the quality of product is secure and safe, because I'm not quite sure that there are lots of controllers in China and Pakistan. So how do you make sure that the products are quality products? Question and comment regarding the generic drugs. The generic drugs might nip in the bud research, might kill research. You take up the molecules after 20 years, but what about the laboratory which has found the molecules? Will the laboratory be happy with that when the molecules end up being used in generic medicines and drugs? Thank you for your question, a very relevant one. So there are various topics, in fact, here. We could have talked about sovereignty. We could have talked about local markets. So if you may, I would tell you that in France and in Europe, we have some security agencies, and they perform very well, almost on a par with the United States. Each batch produced in a small series of manufacturing line is checked without any exception before coming to market. The release of batches, if you want to release batches, you need drastic controls at all stages of the manufacturing process up to the sale of the medicines. And back to the life cycles now. It's a virtuous cycle. When you are an innovative laboratory, you want to get the guarantee, the warranty that your innovation will be marketed very quickly on the global markets at the right price, because you've invested quite a lot in research, you've invested a lot in development, there were lots of costs due to errors and due to failures before coming to a final solution, and you have a patent. When you have a patent for 20 years, this is the average for drugs and medicines, for 20 years, you will turn to the different global health authorities, you will negotiate your price. So for 20 years, you will get the price that was granted to you, and you will be able to absorb and redeem in your innovation. And the goal is to fund the next innovation. At the end of the day, who pays? Either the state or people indirectly when they pay taxes. And you know that budget are squeezed, and if you cannot find a source of savings when the patent terminates, in fact, the model will turn awry and innovation will be stopped, because the laboratories will say, if there's a non-guaranteed price that don't take into account our investment, the game is not worth a candle. So it's better to have a good price, taking into account a 20-year time horizon in order to stimulate innovation. So regarding local geographical dimensions, there's something that is interesting. There are some active principles, not all of them, but some active principles are no longer in Europe because of pricing issues. So today, in Europe and in France as well, people want to repatriate active principles to France and the value creation in France and in Europe in order to combine two significant elements. Of course, you have to take into account product efficiency at the top of a pyramid. So sovereignty, as I told you, the strategic dimension to have a good command of your health system from manufacturing to the sale of the products. First point. Second point, you have to take into account CO2 emissions. The health system is responsible for 8% of CO2 emissions. When you repatriate active principles and value creation to Europe or to another continent, African continent or Asian continent, doesn't matter. What is important is to have a short channel, a short circuit, and they'll be able to combine those two objectives to make sure that this industry is under command by the states with some local channels close to the patients. And it's important also to mitigate the CO2 emissions.
Madame,
Thank you, Mr. Virus. You had a question.
For Madam President from Princess Noor University, I'm fascinated by how much work you're doing with women. And every successful person has had to overcome some adversity to get to where they are. So what did you have to do to get over the adversity you faced to get to where you are? And what is that message to empower the women in your university to let go of their fear or insecurity or doubt to fulfill their dreams and make a difference in the world?
Thank you. Your name again, please?
I'm Marilyn Sherman from the United States.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. Thank you for the encouraging words. It's Vision 2030. I wish I could say it's me, but I'm lucky enough to be living in the era of Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. So Vision 2030 basically transformed our lives in Saudi Arabia. I was educated in North America. I come back in 2004. I've been a university professor since then, but then my life changed in 2016 with the launch of Vision 2030. Vision 2030 is a blueprint for the future. It has transformed everything we do in Saudi Arabia in research, development, and innovation. Just like Jerome has mentioned, we are evolving from just research only. So I was a researcher to being pushed into development and innovation. Now Saudi Arabia has an authority for research, development, and innovation, and increased the expenditure on development and innovation to 2.5 GDP, 2.5% of GDP. And luckily, there is one objective within Vision 2030 that states the relevance and importance of empowering women to have an active role in the development of the country. So I am privileged and honored to be living in the era of 2030. There is no better place for a woman now or a better country than Saudi Arabia in the era of Vision 2030. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
avez-vous d'autres...
Are there any other questions, or is it my turn here? I have a question here from the front of the room. One question here. And the topic is medicine. We don't stop progress. I'm wondering, when will we find solutions, significant solutions, for diseases like Alzheimer and Parkinson? So, well, I'll let the researchers answer this, or specialists. Mr. Ho, maybe you have an idea?
Diseases of our generation. Certainly, I spoke earlier about cancer, but when we think about the neurological disorders, I think that we're at a time right now where through technologies like AI, our ability to better discover new therapies will be much more accelerated. I still think there are substantial barriers. The barriers often exist when you start to really, we like to champion different disciplines coming together, but I think that when we launch a new innovation like AI, we kind of ask the AI to come up with a new drug for us, hopefully make things faster, and it'll solve all of our challenges. But I think that when you look at the continuum of things like AI discovering new drugs, there's so much more work that has to happen. For things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and beyond, and we look at ALS, for example, we kind of go through this life cycle of coming up with new molecules, discovering later that you need to combine them with other molecules. We're using very traditional methods of how to make these combinations, and we're always operating on time scales of years upon years and learning a little too slowly. And I think we're at this phase where we have to reduce those limitations by really accelerating what we can do with things like AI, combine things better. And then ultimately, when we think that we have a good drug, we think we have a good combination, we kind of try to dose them at the highest possible level because we think the more you give, the more effect you'll see. But as we're starting to see, sometimes lower doses yield better outcomes. And so I think we're making a lot of good progress. I think there's still a long ways to go. I think when we think about even this panel, right, it's such a nice collection of the whole spectrum of innovation, implementation sciences, thinking about the economics of what we're trying to introduce to boost accessibility. I think it all stems back to education, right? When we think about these new technologies, we have to really think about really bridging different disciplines together as early as possible so that we don't encounter so many of these delays looking across the disciplines.
Merci, Monsieur O. J'ai une mini question.
Thank you, Mr. O. Last question, the last for Mrs. Pereira. You told me, I found that very interesting, that in terms of research, the European regulator had thrown you into the arms of the US. Can you explain, go further on that? The technologies we develop are medical devices, and the regulations on medical devices are changing in Europe. I have to remember a few years ago, there was a scandal with PIP.
That was used in breast implants, so they were using an industrial grade instead of a medical grade, which was fraud, and there were consequences from that. But that led to changes in the device regulation in Europe, and change is good. I think we want to make. There was definitely a need to make the regulation evolve and change, but I think it changed in a way that it's not about risk management, right? It's about risk aversion. So I think that the cost of this change is very likely going to there's the chance that the cost of this change is going to be higher than the benefits that it can bring. So an approval for a product, it's always a ratio of a risk benefit. So I think it's also, when we think about regulation, that's also very important. So right now, as a startup, we could go for the European market, but it's so unpredictable. There's so many delays. People are still trying to figure things out. And for a company of our size, still investor-backed, if there's something that's unpredictable, definitely it's not where we want to put our time and our energy. If there's something that we don't control, there's many things we don't control. So if we add more on top of that, that's not what we want to do. That's one of the reasons why currently, as part of our regulatory strategy, we are prioritizing the US market first. Of course, we have global ambitions, so we hope to be able to come back to Europe and focus also on getting approval in Europe. But I think it's important to think that, yeah, regulation needs to be there to protect patients, but protect patients, sometimes it's not about risk aversion. It's about making sure you put the right mechanisms in place to protect patients while enabling access to innovation.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais laisser le mot de la fin à Pierre-Yves.
Let Pierre-Yves conclude. So I'd like to thank all the guest speakers. When you organize a roundtable on innovation, often we talk about risk, and organizing a roundtable on innovation is taking a risk by itself, because we run the risk of going in all directions. It's a complex system, and people could it can go in all directions. So the way we manage this risk, you can manage a risk. It relies on two main tools. First of all, inviting exceptional keynote speakers, and you saw that we managed to do that. And the second is to try to set the frame so that we limit the scope. But it's fun, surprises, and in the discussion we just had, we saw that innovation is not easy to anticipate, and we're always in the field of risk. So we talked about topics that we had not planned. We talked about innovation in education, which is an important aspect that we underestimate when we analyze innovation systems. We talk about small data. At the present time, always talk about big data. Small data is interesting. Interesting concept that we talked about. Medication and drugs after patent. So are patents good? Should they be extended, broadened? No, the question of the life of the drug after the patent is interesting. We talked about financing, prevention. I did not expect that we'd talk about fertility bankers, and it's a major surprise. When we talk about innovation, we run into surprises. We have to accept to take such risks because that's where hope comes from. Hope in new treatments, things that will surprise us, things that will awaken us and enable us to live longer in better health, thanks to all of us. So again, many thanks to all the keynote speakers, and thank you all who accepted to stay to the session, and we'll continue later. Thank you.